My people, today we rank some of the greatest rivalries of all time, and of course they're going to be, all in my opinion, let's get started. So the first round, we're off to a bamboozle start. We've got some absolute heavy hitters in this. Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, going against the Brothers of Destruction, Kane and The Undertaker. Of course, we're talking about rivalries, not tag teams. I just made it sound like it was a tag team. That would be a freaking crazy tag team match. You got 2K for that. I don't rate 2K, by the way. Old school games for the win. Anyways, I digress. Come back to what I was talking about. Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, as we know, way before my time, but everyone and their mother knows, two of the most iconic big men stars, period. Andre the Giant being the 9th wonder of the world. Like, the stories of him still live on till today. He's like a legend, a myth. I mean, he's a legend, but he's definitely also some sort of mythical creature. How many beers did he have? His hand being like a normal beer-sized can being in that man's hands is like a plaything, a toy. And then you've got Hulk Hogan, who was probably the most over man on God's green earth, outside of what, Michael Jackson back in the 80s. Of course, he did some work in the 70s and 90s. He was very prominent as well. But I wanted to touch on the 80s specifically, and going into the early 90s period for Hulk Hogan, because the yellow and red, Mr. Vittmans and Prayers, that version going against Andre the Giant was really cool. I've gone back and seen it a few times. Of course, it was a different era, a different time period. But their match at WrestleMania 3, Andre getting slammed, iconic. It still lives in most wrestling fans' memories who were alive at the time and watching it. Obviously, I wasn't born then. However, it's still replayed in packages, in vignettes that we see today online. So this has to be up there. This has to be up there. Was it a technical masterpiece in the ring? Absolutely not. And I think everyone knew it wasn't going to be, in terms of superstardom, in terms of charisma, in terms of like almost like a movie. I would say David versus Goliath, but like, you can't really call Hulk Hogan David. I mean, Hulk Hogan is like, well, he's built at 6'7", but really he's like 6'5", close to like 280 or something. He's a big boy. We can't really call him David, but this was just iconic. On the other side, speaking of iconic, you have The Undertaker and Kane, which in my opinion is the greatest story professional wrestling has ever told. It's actually the sole reason why I am a wrestling fan today. Back when I was a kid in the Ruthless Aggression era, I saw these two bad boys on their own respective shows. Kane being on Raw, Undertaker being on SmackDown. Blue, red, kind of went symbolism with their colors and, you know, the mystical stuff they used to do, and we used to all believe they were real. Longevity wise, I want to say probably this takes the cake over Hulk and Andre, in the sense of their rivalry spanned for more than a decade. Yes, their stories of Undertaker and Kane close to 2 decades, but a lot of the time they tag teamed as, you know, a formidable force via the Brothers of Destruction. However, in terms of like their matchups, WrestleMania 14, plenty of matches in the Attitude Era. WrestleMania 20, I believe it was, the return of the Dead Man after Kane buried him. When Taker was feuding against Mr. McMahon. We also had a pretty underrated feud between the two during a not so hot period in WWE, being 2010, where Kane for once had the upper hand against his brother, and he was world champion. Great promo work by Kane during that time frame as well. Very, very much underrated. I'm gonna have to be biased. Here, and I'm trying not to be biased in this whatever ranking that I'm doing, because it's best not to be, but hey, it's my video and it's my choices. Without a shadow of a doubt, I understand how iconic Andre and Hulk Hogan is. For me, Undertaker and Kane, it just doesn't get any cooler. It's like almost like a comic book story come to life. For that reason, I'm going with Undertaker and Kane. Next up, we've got Triple H doing his thing twice, of course, because, you know, Triple H likes to be everywhere. I mean, he's even everywhere in my rankings. Anyways, we've got Triple H and The Rock, and then we've got Triple H versus Daniel Bryan, and more so, I want to say The Authority versus Daniel Bryan. Now, I'll start with the former first, Triple H and The Rock. Triple H and The Rock really initiated their rivalry, I want to say, as the Attitude Era was coming in to be. Feuding over the IC title, ladder matches, great matches to be honest, and even the showdowns during the actual peak of the Attitude Era was present to see. Two superstars, young thoroughbreds back in the day, who are really trying to become top of the mountain. Like, the competition back then was serious, not just between WCW and the WWF at the time, but within the WWF itself. It was just I don't want to say a cutthroat environment, because I wasn't there, but based on what the wrestler says, everyone wants to just make sure that their TV time was the most prominent time. And I think in terms of the egos and even the talent both, The Rock and yes, Triple H, I believe, did have talent as well. When they came to a head, I think they put on great television, and they kind of reignited their feud in that picture that we see at the bottom there. Back in 2015, WrestleMania 31, a very good WrestleMania, where they hinted this kind of tease between Triple H and The Rock, and they also had this cool little showdown on SmackDown, which has got like ridiculous amount of views. Of course, it has on YouTube. Go check it out. I believe that was the same year, 2015. Sadly, the match never came to be. However, I want to touch on, again, the longevity here. Longevity matters in this ranking because it really shows how much juice you can get out of these rivalries. And if we come to, one of the most peakest years in professional wrestling, recent memory, 2024, Triple H and The Rock had this kind of, as Cody Rhodes said, you know what? Swinging contest into now that The Rock's of course a board member, so he's got control, Triple H being obviously the chief content officer, I believe it is. So they're kind of egos clashed and stuff, and they brought it into the story as well. They brought it actually on screen. Not sure if it was real, but on screen kayfabe, this is what we're talking about right now. They kind of had that back and forth, but Triple H was almost the face. I mean, we say that right now, he's a big ass heel in 2026. Back in 2024, he was like the good executive, and The Rock was the bad heel executive. So my point is, the reason why I bring it is that feud kind of still continued till like the later years in the 2020s. Of course, Triple H sadly can't wrestle anymore due to his condition, and he's full-blown gone into executive mode. This feud was very memorable. However, in terms of what we got on the contrary, we got Daniel Bryan and Triple H, the Authority, whatever you want to call it. Now, I'll caveat this by saying I wasn't present for most of The Rock and Triple H's feud because I was an infant, right? I did go back and watch it, and of course I saw the stuff 10 years ago, and of course 2024 as well. The Daniel Bryan saga, and I'm not going to sit here and be like I was the #1 fan of Daniel Bryan. I wasn't. I always appreciate how good he was in the ring. I appreciate what the Yes movement was, because back then it was like the first time, way before Cody Crybabies and stuff, where the crowd really, the fans really got Daniel Bryan to the dance via his talents and recognition of the talent that we saw as fans. This completely changed the entire game of what it meant. Bear in mind, this was the time of Vince McMahon. I'm not saying that was all bad, but this was still kind of the time of, they preferred not necessarily giants as they did in the 80s and the 90s and even sometimes in the early 2000s. As the Ruthless Aggression came in, the PG era, whatever you want to call it after that, they start to open up to a lot more mid-sized guys. But Daniel Bryan was still your smaller guy. Not by average means, because he's probably still bulkier and stuff, but in terms of his height and the overall structure, in the world of giants or professional wrestling, he still was a small guy. Wasn't your conventional looking superstar that a Mr. McMahon, Vince McMahon would push. But the crowd completely turned this around, gave us incredible memories at 2014 Royal Rumble, completely turned upside down 2015's Royal Rumble at Roman Reigns' moment, and got Daniel Bryan to WrestleMania 30, WrestleMania, the opening match with Triple H, which was actually a very good match, and then the closing, the triple threat between Batista and Randy Orton, and he came out on top. So it's an iconic moment. Again, I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of Daniel Bryan because it's just, in my eyes, there's more to professional wrestling than the actual wrestling, as stupid as that sounds. And there were some things that I couldn't just necessarily resonate or connect with Daniel Bryan. However, I could appreciate he was very, very one of the best in the ring, so it was cool for him to see this moment. So if I had to pick between these two, I think in terms of impact, because if you go back to the Attitude Era, even the dawn of the Attitude Era and the fall of it, we had so many iconic rivalries during that time anyway, where the product was universally loved, right, by everybody. You had obviously The Rock and Stone Cold. You had Stone Cold, Mr. McMahon. You had Kane and The Undertaker. You had so much going on where you can't say this specific feud was like the reason why you had eyes on the WWE. Whereas, as crazy as it sounds, the Daniel Bryan and Authority saga, 2013 going into 2014 and a bit 2015, those couple of years was, I could say, primarily Daniel Bryan's story with Triple H, the Authority, was the main reason a lot of people were actually still glued on to wrestling, because wrestling wasn't necessarily the hottest in the 2010s, if I'm being honest, and I was watching religiously back then. So for that reason, I have to say this feud changed the game for everybody. It's gonna have to be Daniel Bryan and Triple H or the Authority. Next up, okay, we've got two iconic, and I'm gonna get cancelled for this because I'm not gonna waste any time. We've got Randy Orton and John Cena, who, as we know, John Cena retired last year. two of the most iconic figures in their own right. They really carried the ruthless aggression, even the PG era, I want to say. I mean, we had them literally last year, Backlash do a program as well. Now, the dynamic's always been Randy being the heel, John Cena being the face, and I think that's worked as a good dynamic. I do think there's a better heel that John Cena's done work with whilst John Cena was a babyface, and I'll get into that feud later. You probably know who that is. But this rivalry is iconic. It's two of the guys that started in the same OVW group alongside Batista and Brock Lesnar back in 2002, and they really changed the game. Obviously, Brock Lesnar left, Batista later on, a few years later, left, but you had Randy and John still standing as the two pillars, I want to say, like 1A and like 1B almost. Obviously 1A being Cena, he was evidently slightly above Randy. He was the A guy, but Randy wasn't far behind, and I think Randy played his role great. They had good chemistry, Randy being great in the ring, Cena being not too bad as well, but I just feel like there was so much repetitiveness in this feud. Nothing new and fresh came out of it. Even the matches just felt repetitive. And it's crazy saying, I mean, Randy's one of the best to do in the ring, but it's not, the feud's memorable, but I can't say, oh, this specific match, whatever match. They changed it up a few times. They had a triple threat at WrestleMania. This was in 2008, I want to say. So that would have been WrestleMania 24. Orlando, Triple H, Randy, and Cena. So they did bring in other superstars as well, but the rivalry itself has been iconic. And that picture we see, I believe, is from 2014. The whole merging of the World Heavyweight Championship and the WWE Championship, bringing that together. That was a cool time. But if we're comparing it to what we got on the left-hand side, ladies and gentlemen, that is one of the greatest feuds I've ever seen in professional wrestling. We have Jeff Hardy, who is one of the, if not the most popular people on God's green earth. Yes, I'm going to say it. I know it's been beat to death. He was arguably, what, the second most popular person if your name wasn't Barack Obama. If the phrase goes like that, I'm not lying. That was legit the case. Again, I was watching wrestling here, you know, as a teenager, I believe, religiously, and Jeff was that guy. There's always that debate if, you know, he didn't go off the rails, sadly, because of his demons or anything like that. Would he be as big as John Cena, if not surpass John Cena? The jury's still out for that, guys. I can't sit there and be like, oh, yeah, definitively that would be a no or a yes. I might be leaning more towards a yes. I'm not even joking. That's how hot Jeff was. And this point he was on SmackDown. You had CM Punk, who was the complete antithesis of what Jeff Hardy is in terms of lifestyle, straight edge, his way of conducting himself, almost becoming that schnob of a character, like, I'm better than you. And this got so personal, where it teed off, pretty much covered most of 2009, but it teed off with the steel cage match, I believe it was, on SmackDown, where Jeff Hardy, if he was losing, I think he was to leave the WWE, and he ends up leaving. Of course, he was to, you know, I believe he was battling some demons, so he had to take time off. Dare I say, Jeff wasn't ever the same after, not in terms of, you know, I'm saying his health, because obviously he recouped post 2011. He had a bad showing in TNA, of course. Still one of the most popular superstars, and he's beloved. He's definitely beloved, but in terms of his peak, like, height of being the man, that was never touched again. And I think this culminated in, I guess, the best way it could. This feud was one of the most personal feuds, and bear in mind, guys, this feud was like just for about a year, if that, less than a year, I believe. You're comparing that to Randy and Cena, who go on for like almost 2 decades. But as CM Punk said to our tribal chief of Raw, just because you did it longer doesn't mean you did it better. That's the mantra I'm going to use here, and for that reason, I'm going with CM Punk and Jeff Hardy to the next round. Okay, this one's going to be easy, I'm going to say. First, I looked at it and I was like, what's going on here? Because it's a tough one. Off the bat, Mr. McMahon, not Vince, Mr. McMahon, the character, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. I wasn't watching wrestling during the Attitude Era because I was like 4. However, I've gone back, I've studied tape, and I see how pivotal, how important that time was, especially this feud. Arguably, that was the primary feud in the Attitude Era. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say that again. Mr. McMahon and Stone Cold was arguably the primary feud in the Attitude Era. The reason why I restated that, the Attitude Era held some of the greatest feuds we had. When I say greatest feuds, I mean intense. You had Triple H, you had The Rock, you had Triple H Mankind, you had Rock and Mick Foley Mankind, whatever you want to call, Undertaker, Kane, you had Rock and Stone Cold, you had. But this Stone Cold and Mr. McMahon was what like was just peak, and it's not even with a freaking superstar. One of them's a superstar, arguably the biggest superstar, Stone Cold. The other one is freaking the chairman of the company. Go figure. So this was, it's undeniable. On the other hand, you've got a feud that I have been seeing since the dawn of day, because I've been watching wrestling as an adult, and as a teenager, with Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. Now, this feud I think is great. I think anyone who says it's not great is just trying to sound different, or they're just hating Roman Reigns back in his day and now they're hating Brock Lesnar. I get that, but let's be honest, they put on some stinkers. Absolutely. WrestleMania 34 sucked. WrestleMania 38, I want to say, kind of sucked too. SummerSlam match, I believe that same year, rocked. Their WrestleMania 31 match is one of my most favorite matches, period. I don't care. I'm not saying it was technical. It was a fun fight. A fun fight between the guy they're trying to push excessively, Roman Reigns, and the Beast incarnate, literally, with one of the greatest, if not, no, sorry, the greatest cash-in WrestleMania in wrestling history via Seth Rollins, and coming to cost his brother once again in Roman Reigns. So this feud is great, and I think the different iterations of it, the one that I mentioned where Roman was face, and then you fast forward to Roman being heel, Brock being face, Cowboy, and him dropping these promos. I loved the dynamic. I really enjoyed this feud, but I think I would be doing a disservice to basic logic if I did not choose Stone Cold and Mr. McMahon, because again, that feud was so hot, and arguably without it, would I be sitting here talking about wrestling right now? Probably not. So for that reason, Stone Cold and Mr. McMahon to the next round. Right, next up, I've covered these two again. So the ones that I've covered already, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm going to go with Undertaker and Kane. I just think it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my entire life. You've got this big red freaking burnt toasted monster and his older brother who's got these powers, and like when they come together, in my opinion, they're also two of the best big men to wrestle in the ring. I think Kane especially doesn't get his flowers in the ring. Taker's of course had some of the best matches ever with Shawn Michaels, even some great matches with Triple H as well, but Kane never got his recognition. But when these two guys came together, I'm not saying it was always magical in the ring, but I enjoyed it, and I think the rivalry, the foundation's always going to be there of a rivalry between Undertaker and Kane, where you can switch it on at any point because of that longevity and because of the impact it's had. Unlike Daniel Bryan and the Authority, where it had a lot of impact, not longevity forever. Daniel Bryan eventually got over, and it's like, okay, cool, we're done with this. Kane and the Undertaker, snap it any time period. Let's get it started again, and it's always hot to watch. So Kane and Undertaker progress. Oh. Now, I'm going to have to eat my words, because, again, as much as I'm saying Mr. McMahon and Stone Cold are pivotal to, professional wrestling, again, me sitting here right now talking about a product that exists, who knows, this product may not have existed if it wasn't for Stone Cold and maybe the program he had with Mr. McMahon. But, again, I'm going to just say, man, that every time I look at that picture of long-haired CM Punk with the World Heavyweight Championship, the big gold, that belt, if you can see it behind me, but without that freaking big fuck-off W in the middle. That World Championship, the big gold, and Jeff Hardy with face paint and the armbands and the black vest, just take my money. It was just personal. It was well done. The matches were good. They had great chemistry in the ring. Yeah, sorry, CM Punk and Jeff Hardy are going. And now, we're coming into the first round, I guess, of this. Taker and Kane versus Hardy and Punk. This is going to be a very, very difficult one for me, because, again, Kane and Taker are just... It holds a place in my heart, but again, I just can't go in with being biased, because they got me into professional wrestling. I have to look at the points I've been given CM Punk and Jeff Hardy, and that is the substance. There is arguably, so far on this list, no other... rivalry feud that comes into mind with more substance and shots of taking them personally than Punk and Jeff Hardy. So as much as I love my Kane and Undertaker, it's gonna have to be Punk and Jeff Hardy. Now, over to the other side, we've got Michaels playing double duty here. We've got Michaels and Bret, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. Now, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, of course, iconic rivalry, literally in reality and on screen. The Montreal Screwjob. Now, of course, that wasn't it wasn't the cause of the Attitude Era. There was many different factors to the Attitude Era, but this was partially a catalyst for the Attitude Era as well. This was in 1997, heading it like we're touching onto the cusp of the Attitude Era itself. And these are two of the best to do it, period. They were in their prime. Michaels, there's always the debate who's better, Michaels or Brett. Both two of the best to do absolutely in the ring. This picture taken from, I believe, 2010 or 9. I'm not including Bret Hart's match at 2010's WrestleMania because, yeah, we don't talk about that. But in terms of him being in his peak, one of the greatest, and of course, Shawn Michaels, luckily I got to see his rehash of his career post 2002. Iconic feud, but I have to sit there and say, number one, I wasn't present for most of their matches, or for any of their matches, actually. And number two, when we look on the other hand side, you got Michaels and Taker. They put on not only some of the best, if not the best WrestleMania matches, they also put on some absolute bangers back in the 90s. The Royal Rumble, the first ever inaugural Hell in a Cell where Kane made his debut. That Hell in a Cell match is highly underrated. The reason why it's underrated is because it's kind of overshadowed by the following year's King of the Ring, where The Undertaker literally tries to kill Mankind, Mick Foley, in front of live television, basically. That's kind of why, but in terms of a pure matchup, the year before, 1997, October, Bad Blood, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, shits all over the Mankind and Undertaker match. Yes, I said that. The Undertaker and Mankind match, iconic in terms of spot fest and what it did for the professional wrestling as a whole, in terms of moment making, but pure match standpoint, that Michaels and Taker have been having freaking chemistry since the dawn of day. That was back in the 90s where Shawn was a bit of a prick. Taker was sort of the stoic individual who was trying to lead the pack, lead the locker room, and that was sort of played on television as well. You fast forward to their reiteration, their 2.0 version of their rivalry, their feud in the late 2000s. One of the best final two of Royal Rumbles in history, Royal Rumble 2007. They had a mini match. Freaking amazing. 2007, peak Undertaker, peak Shawn Michaels. I mean, Michaels has been peak. He's been in his prime for like 20 years of his career, like since when he started, or maybe 30, because he started in the 80s. But this rehash in the late 2000s of their feud from the 90s was so cool, because now it was all about these gunslingers, these veterans who could still go at the peak of their career with all this wisdom and knowledge. At this point, it was who is the best. There's no more Shawn Michaels being a prick. The contrast wasn't there like it was in the 90s in terms of the personalities. I mean, Shawn Michaels had found Jesus, found God at this point. So now it was all about who is the best. So much so where they put on, as you see in that image, WrestleMania 25, arguably the best WrestleMania match in history, followed up by a close second the following year, where Michaels became so crazy about ending the streak, and this was all about who the better man is between these veterans, these gunslingers, where he puts his career in the line and he goes off into the sunset in one of the most beautiful things ever. The reason why I say that is because we don't talk about 2018 bold Shawn Michaels. For that reason, we're going with Taker and Shawn. Next up, two very good feuds. From a match standpoint, Cena and Styles shits over Triple H and Randy Orton. You know what I'm starting to see? Randy Orton's really, really good. He's one of the best, and I think he's one of the best in the ring too, very fluid. But he's not necessarily, he's like him and John Cena. Not amazing matches. Him and Triple H, not necessarily amazing matches. And again, I'm not really hating on Triple H. I think Triple H low-key is actually pretty good in the ring. I'm not sure why people hated on him. I know Reign of Terror and everything like that, but he was very, like, as his nickname says, very cerebral in the sense of like pinpointing, focusing on a body point, taking that down. His moveset was cool as well, like, you know, the knee smash, the close on the spine buster, one of the best spine busters in the game. Obviously, Arn Anderson probably takes the cake, but this is a close second. And of course, their feud is all about, you know, coming back from Evolution, really throwing Randy out Evolution, thumbs down, between the shoulders, all the malarkey. But even goes further into like the late 2000s. This is where their feud really hit their peak. I mean, Triple H and Randy having their feud in like 2009, I believe it is. Randy making Triple H be handcuffed, all kinky shit, watching him kiss his wife in front of him, again kinky shit. Triple H busting through Randy's home, which these segments sometimes can be a bit funny and corny. I think this one was done quite well and it felt quite legit. Randy's a really good seller, not just in the ring, but you know his facial expressions. If you go back to Randy's feud with Taker in 2005, and like every time Taker would come out, Randy's facial expressions, even from a young age, being quite novel in the world of professional wrestling, was executed very well. And then here again, when Triple H busts through his door, and Randy's just like, his face is like done so well. The duds here, and this is where they lose points, is their matches. Case in point, WrestleMania 25, 2009, the literal follow-up to Michaels and Taker, which I have to mention because going up against after that match is obviously a hindrance in any regard, no matter who you are. I will add that in, but the match was just lame. It was just whatever. I think they could have done a better job in the actual in-ring match. And secondly, what was the finish? I don't know why Triple H won that. That was 2009 bold Randy. The Randy we still talk about today, and for some reason he just lost to Triple H, who was already champion, I believe, and he left for the championship. And it's like, anyways, yeah. On the other hand, we talk about Styles and Cena, the face of TNA, the face of the WWE. Two superstars we thought we would never ever meet till 2016 rolls about and we see AJ Styles come out and finally make his debut in the WWE. And at this point as well, we're like, I don't know, are they just gonna feed him to Cena? Nope. It's time to beat up John Cena, and they freaking went in. They went in harder than they need to. SummerSlam match, one of the best. A Royal Rumble match where Cena captures his 16th championship to match Ric Flair. Holy smokes, we saw some of Cena's best matches. Really in the 2010s, we saw some of Cena's best matches. And Styles brought that out of him. And this dynamic between the two worked so well. They had so much chemistry. Their feud was one of the best things to see. So although maybe from a personal standpoint, the rivalry with Triple H and Randy had more history, more of a personal touch, I think from a sports entertainment perspective, the face of TNA and the face of WWE finally doing collabs and putting on bangers, I have to go with Styles and Cena because we're taking into consideration the quality of the match too. Now this one is very, very difficult. Very difficult. I wish this didn't come like this early, both of them. I wish they were separate because The Rock and Stone Cold is arguably, like I said with Stone Cold and Mr. McMahon, one of the most iconic feuds ever. It's my favorite feud of the Attitude Era. Of course, I wasn't watching, but when I went back to watch it, I really enjoyed Mr. McMahon and Stone Cold, but that was just a massive buzz. For me, it was Rock and Stone Cold because it's like these are two of the thoroughbreds. These are two of the faces of the company, like your John Cena and your Randy Orton later on in the Ruthless Aggression era and the PG era. This was the pinnacle. And these two gentlemen here, The Rock and Stone Cold, only had a stint for a few years. They weren't around for like 10 years or anything like that. They were both, I think, below 5 years. They did so much magic with each other in such a small time where it's hard for me to combat. And that's why it makes it so hard, because John Cena and Edge, on the other hand, John Cena started to get booed in about 2006. Edge had obviously won the Money in the Bank the previous year, 05, the inaugural Money in the Bank winner. He goes full heel mode. He snatches Matt Hardy's girl for real and makes him watch on live television as he has a celebration. This is afterwards, but live sex celebration. He embodies what a Money in the Bank winner should be, you know, a snarky piece of shit heel. I hated Edge's guts as a kid. And of course, that tells me he does a tremendous job. That's why he's one of my all-time greats in today's world. But at that point, I hated him. And when Mr. McMahon, New Year's Revolution 06, Cena's bloodied up. He's finished his match. Can't believe who it was. I'm not sure if it was Umaga. But he's bloodied up. Calls Edge out. Edge comes out with his hot girlfriend, Lita. Comes in, cashes in, becomes a WWE champion. And this is the pinnacle. The start heading into the pinnacle of Edge's main event title run. I mean, this guy became 11-time world champion from 06 to 2011. That is actually crazy. That is what, 5 years? That is literally 5 years this man became an 11-time world champion. If he wasn't to retire that year, of course I know he's made his return, but if he didn't retire in 2011, who would have known? He could have been close to Randy Orton, Triple H status, or even close to maybe an John Cena status in terms of world championships and how many times he's won it. And I'm probably going to get cancelled saying this, but the more I've spoken about this feud, again, I have more memories. I have more memories with Edge and Cena, and I know how pivotal and freaking groundbreaking The Rock and Stone Cold was. But again, it wasn't the A feud in the Attitude Era. It was probably the B feud. The A feud really was Stone Cold and Mr. McMahon. So for that reason, I'm going to go with John Cena and Edge, because in 06, I want to argue this was probably the hottest feud in the company at the time. The roster was stacked. Stacked. SmackDown was doing bits. You had Kurt Angle, Undertaker doing bits there as well. But this, like going to Canada, doing the TLC match, everything like that was just so well done. Edge came in at a time where Cena needed an edge to come in. What I mean by that is, Cena went toe-to-toe with Triple H just before that as well. He was still getting booed. People were cheering Triple H. Edge was that snarky piece of shit heel that I mentioned earlier, where although Cena still got booed, it was still cool to boo Edge as well. So it kind of gave Cena a bit of breathing room during the peak of his career. So I think they just made honey. Sounds a bit zesty, but they made so much magic together, and for that reason, I'm going to go with Edge and Cena. This is an absolutely easy one. Cena and Punk. Ambrose and Rollins is cool. I wish they did more. Obviously, Ambrose didn't stick around in the WWE too long after the Shield broke up. I want to say like 5 years. 2019, he went to AEW. Now, as soon as the Shield broke up, Roman Reigns was kind of doing his own thing. He was feuding with Randy Orton. They went straight into a program with Rollins and Ambrose. Now, it wasn't bad. It was pretty decent. And obviously, it was cool to see them rehash it later on as well in 2016, where all three members of the Shield were literally WWE champion all on the same night. That should have been done at WrestleMania. Screw Vince McMahon for saying he's not on board with that. But anyways, coming back to the feud between specifically Ambrose and Rollins, it was okay. It was okay. There's literally nothing more I can say. Punk and Cena, is there anything I need to say? That 2011 feud, the summer of Punk, responsibility-wise also goes to John Cena. This freaking feud was amazing. Punk coming out to be the voice of the voiceless, being that anti-hero, being the guy to, say, I'm holding the company hostage. The Money in the Bank match that they had in Chicago, one of the greatest goosebump feels ever. Punk walking out with a championship, then coming back with Cult of Personality as Cena wins the new WWE championship after taking out a poor Rey Mysterio, who was literally just a filler. And they come out and they stand, face to face, the promos they had and how it linked into the pipe bomb. And not only did that feud stop there, because thankfully CM Punk came back all these years later, they rehashed it last year with the roles reversed in John Cena being the heel, dropping his own variation of the pipe bomb, and them having a very underrated, and I say underrated because a lot of people didn't give them love, an underrated, excellent match at Night of Champions. I believe that was a PLE, correct me if I'm wrong. It's an obvious one, guys. It's Punk and Cena. I'm going to go with Taker and Shawn just because of the history, and again, some of the best matches. Although I know Cena and Styles did put on freaking masterclasses, I'm gonna have to go with Taker and Shawn. The matches, but also the story is just too rich. See, this to me is the example of the definition of Cena's two greatest rivals. Shout out to Randy, he's a close third, but yeah, the work that these two did is just I think I'm going to have to give it to CM Punk here. As much as I loved the feud between Edge and Cena, I think we just got more out of the Punk and Edge feud. I feel like the Edge and Cena, although one of the greatest feuds ever, and I think one of the greatest rivals for John Cena was an Edge, it was still very much manufactured, and of course everything is manufactured in the world of professional wrestling. But what I mean is, if you look on the other side of a CM Punk brought that reality edge, pun intended, to the program, especially in the early 2010s, when he was looking to leave the company and he was done. And this added a element of just realism, especially when you're going against the corporate good guy in Cena. Punk was that complete antithesis to what it means to be a corporate good guy. And that dynamic worked so well. And again, they got more juice out of it. Again, 10 years later, 12 years later, last year in 2025. For that reason, as hard as it is, it's going to have to be Punk and Cena. I'm going to go with Punk Cena again. I think longevity-wise, they both covered, 2 different decades. Of course, Michaels and Taker probably got a bit more out of it. But in terms of feud-wise, and because again, at one point, it was all about who's the better man between Michaels and Taker. It wasn't necessarily super personal in the late 2000s. It was personal in the 90s. But with Punk and Cena, it was who is the better man, best in the world, and arguably the biggest star in the world in John Cena. But it was very personal in terms of the direction they took. They were complete opposites of what they stood for in values. So for that reason, it's Punk and Cena. Speaking of personal, I think it doesn't get more personal than these two options here. This is literally the final. Let me sit out for this, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to the end, and I think I've touched so much on Punk and Cena, and again, the personal aspect was there. The complete opposites were also there as well. But I don't know what it is. I have this weird freaking attachment to the Jeff Hardy and CM Punk feud. Maybe it was because I was really young. I don't know, but I think just from a feud standpoint, in terms of good matches, absolutely freaking like heat and rivalry. Punk and Cena, I mean, at this point, if anyone chose any one of these two, I wouldn't fault them. I'm still probably going to get faulted because I'm going to go with CM Punk and Jeff Hardy as, in terms of this list, the greatest, oh, that looks horrible, the greatest rivalry ever. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.